The beckoning darkness. Our next account comes from a user who posted their experience on a forum dedicated to strange occurrences in national parks. Let's call him David, and his story takes us to a forgotten corner of the Olympic National Forest in Washington state. A place known for its ancient, primeval forests and persistent mists. David was a photographer, specifically an amateur landscape photographer, always searching for the perfect, untouched vista. He was renowned among his friends for his adventurous spirit, often going off-trail, guided by intuition and old maps, to find unique angles and hidden gems that mainstream tourists would never see. He sought the wild, the untamed, the places where nature reigned supreme. One autumn, he embarked on a solo trip to a less explored part of the Olympic National Forest. He'd heard whispers of an old, abandoned logging road deep in the forest that supposedly led to a pristine, untouched waterfall, a cascade of pure, untamed beauty. The road wasn't on any modern map, only hinted at on old, faded topographical surveys, barely a line on paper. This was exactly the kind of challenge David lived for, a true explorer's quest. He parked his truck at the end of a gravel service road and started his hike, loaded with camera gear, provisions, and his trusty GPS. The first few hours were rugged but uneventful. He bushwhacked through dense undergrowth, relying heavily on his GPS and the faint, almost swallowed by nature traces of the old logging road, barely a discernible path. The forest here was ancient, the trees colossal, their trunks wider than a car, their branches draped with thick, emerald moss, creating an eerie, perpetual twilight, even at midday. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of rich earth and decaying leaves. As the afternoon wore on, a thick, impenetrable fog began to roll in, slowly obscuring the already dim light, turning the world into a swirling canvas of gray. David checked his watch. It was later than he thought. He decided to find a spot to make camp, planning to continue his search for the waterfall in the morning. He found a relatively flat clearing, set up his tent, and started a small, crackling fire, its flames a defiant flicker against the encroaching gloom. The fog intensified, wrapping around his camp like a shroud, reducing visibility to mere feet, making the familiar forest feel alien and claustrophobic. As darkness fell, the fog, combined with the dense forest, created an almost absolute silence. No wind, no distant animal sounds, just the crackle of his small fire and the muffled thump of his own heart. He was truly alone, swallowed by the mist. And for the first time on this trip, a knot of profound unease began to form in his stomach, tightening with every passing minute. Then he heard it. A sound, faint at first, carried on the damp, heavy air. It was a voice, a child's voice, calling out. "Hello?" it whispered, barely audible yet distinct. "Is anyone there?" David froze, his hand hovering over his coffee cup. A child? Deep in this remote wilderness? It was impossible, illogical. He knew this area was rarely traversed, miles from any road or habitation. His first thought was immediate panic. A lost child. He grabbed his headlamp and stood up, ready to search, his instincts overriding his logic. "Hello?" the voice called again, slightly louder this time. It sounded young, maybe 7 or 8 years old. and it carried a tone of wavering desperation, just on the edge of tears, a sound designed to tug at the heartstrings. And it seemed to be coming from deeper within the fog, off to his left, just beyond the reach of his firelight. "Hello," David called back, his voice thick with concern, cutting through the silence. "Are you okay? Where are you?" "Here," the voice responded, a little closer now, and still to his left. "I'm lost. I can't see. Can you help me?" David hesitated. Something felt off. A subtle discord in the voice. It was too perfect, too clear for the fog, almost as if it was right beside him, yet always just out of sight. And the desperation felt almost practiced, like a performance. He had heard stories, old legends of the woods, of things that mimic human voices to lure people deeper into the forest, to disorient them, to prey upon their compassion. He told himself it was ridiculous. It was a child. He had to help. His moral compass demanded it. He started walking in the direction of the voice, calling out reassurance. "I'm coming. Keep talking. Don't move." "This way," the voice urged, now sounding almost gleeful. No longer desperate. A subtle shift in tone that sent a shiver down his spine. And it was still moving away, always just out of reach, always just a little deeper into the thickening fog and the denser trees, leading him further and further from the relative safety of his camp. David pushed through thorny bushes, tripped over unseen roots, his heart pounding in his ears, a frantic drumbeat. He realized with a dawning horror that he was no longer thinking about the lost child. He was thinking about the voice itself. It wasn't just beckoning, it was leading. And it was leading him further and further from his camp, deeper into the bewildering, silent heart of the forest, into a labyrinth of mist and ancient trees. The light from his headlamp seemed to shrink, swallowed by the oppressive darkness and fog, becoming a tiny, pathetic beacon in an infinite void. He stopped abruptly, his breath catching in his throat. He felt a sudden, profound chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. The voice, which had been pulling him forward, went silent. Absolute silence. The kind of silence that screams. He stood there, panting, surrounded by the impenetrable fog, utterly disoriented. He had no idea which way his camp was. He pulled out his GPS, but the dense canopy and the thick, swirling fog were interfering with the signal, rendering it useless. He was truly lost, adrift in a sea of white. Then he heard it again. Not the voice this time. A low, guttural chuckle. It was close, too close, and it came from directly behind him. A sound of deep, malevolent amusement. David spun around, his headlamp beam cutting frantically through the fog, a desperate, searching arc. Nothing. Just the swirling white mist and the dark, indistinct silhouettes of trees that seemed to shift and writhe at the edges of his vision. But the chuckle, it wasn't human. It was deep, resonating, and filled with a chilling, malicious glee, a sound of triumph. It was the sound of something that had succeeded in its hunt, that had lured its prey exactly where it wanted it. He didn't wait. He didn't think. He simply ran, blindly, frantically, in what he hoped was the opposite direction of the sound, fueled by pure, unadulterated terror. He ran until his lungs burned, until his legs ached and cramped, crashing through the undergrowth, branches whipping at his face, tearing at his clothes. He didn't know where he was going. He just knew he had to get away from that, from the sound, from the presence, from the consuming dread. He ran until he stumbled, collapsing onto the forest floor, gasping for breath, his body trembling uncontrollably. He lay there for a long time, listening, every nerve ending screaming. The chuckle was gone. The voice was gone. Just the overwhelming silence of the fog-shrouded forest, now feeling even more ominous, as if it was holding its breath. He was utterly, completely lost, and utterly alone. He spent the rest of the night huddled against the base of a massive, moss-covered tree, shivering, not from cold, but from sheer terror that permeated his very bones. He kept his headlamp on, pointing it randomly into the fog, desperate for any sign of familiar landmarks, any break in the oppressive white. Every rustle of leaves, every imagined shadow, every creak of the ancient trees sent a fresh wave of panic through him. When dawn finally broke, a faint gray light filtering through the mist, the fog slowly began to dissipate, revealing familiar trees and features. To his utter disbelief, he realized he had somehow run in a massive circle, a perfect, terrifying loop. His tent was just a few hundred yards away, clearly visible through the thinning mist, a beacon of safety he had unknowingly circled around all night. He was so close to something he couldn't comprehend, something that had played with him, toyed with his life. David packed up his camp, faster than he ever had in his life, his hands still shaking, his movements jerky. He found the old logging road and followed it out, not caring about the waterfall, not caring about photographs, his adventurous spirit utterly crushed. He drove straight home. The image of the fog and the echo of that malicious chuckle burned into his mind, an indelible scar. He never went backpacking alone again, and he certainly never pursued a voice calling for help in the deep, beckoning darkness of the woods. He learned that some things in the wilderness are not lost. They are waiting, and they are very, very patient.